It's Donna Cravata, and I'm back again for Article 6 in this Sustainable Rhythm series of 10 articles. And this one is called The Paradox of Wisdom, AI, and the LLM of You. And in the last live stream and article, we talked about curating your content into a mixtape. So it kind of tells the story of how you got to where you are. And what we're going to talk about today is um, where to build this and how to use this in a way where AI is working 100% in your voice. So I'm going to take you through how I figured this out and how I'm using this in my own business and with clients. But first, I want to start with the paradox of wisdom and AI. Um, it feels like two things that shouldn't work together, but they actually do. You bring the wisdom, and AI is bringing uh, just the capacity to hold more information than your brain could hold. And it's also incredibly good at recognizing patterns. And when we're working with our own work, we're often too close to see the patterns that somebody else can see for us because we fall in love with our work or we forget about things or we just don't see it because it's so obvious to us, you know? It's not obvious to somebody else. One of the things that I learned early on in my business, probably around 17 years ago, is that the thing that is the easiest for us to do is the thing we should charge the most money for because that means that's your gift. It's the thing that you can do differently than other people can. And we so often miss that um, because we're too close and it's so ingrained in how we do everything. We don't think there's anything special about it. One of the ways that AI has really helped me, and I don't view it as a productivity tool. I'm not coming to AI to save time. I do end up saving time most of the time. Sometimes it's like rabbit hole city, but what it's really helped me recognize in my own work and also when I'm working with clients, and I'll explain both scenarios. With my own work, it's helped me name things that I have done forever. And I just never thought it warranted a name because it was just the way I think. But it ends up that that's the part that makes my work different than everybody else's. I was focusing on the tactics and the tools and the how you get this done, but you know, that changes, and now that changes faster than ever. So that's not the best value of my work. The best value of my work is being able to connect the dots between your own work and your own stories and to recognize yourself in and your growth and the trajectory of the work that you've done over probably decades at this point. And when I work with clients, you know, they're giving me the information that they think that I need and what they think is important. But so often they're missing the same thing. And I don't know that until I start digging around and poking around and doing research. And AI has helped me see this in their work too because again, I know a lot of the people that I work with. So I'm close to what they do and I have a vested interest, one, because they're my clients, but also because a lot of these people are my friends too. And I see somebody right here in the chat that's one of those people, Catherine Avery. I mean, I know Catherine for probably 15 years. So um, I have a vested interest in the work that I do with people. And that gives me a blind spot as well. And AI points out those blind spots. And to me, that's the most valuable part of working with these tools. That it transcends, like, I'm going to save time and it could, fill up my calendar. I don't really care about that. I care, what can it see that I can't see? And okay, so let me share some more about this. So one of the ways one of the things that happens when I work with AI, and I really want to, I don't know, this article is really hitting at at a kind of tender point with the progression of AI because of the AI detectors that are hitting all of the platforms now. And I wrote an article about that a week or so ago that you could find on my Substack and on LinkedIn. But I don't think that they're fairly determining what is created by AI and what is created by humans. And I think that the way that I use AI and the way that I work with these tools will help us keep our voices more human and will force a bit of accountability to these AI detectors. We don't really have a choice. They're here, and AI is here, and none of this is going back. So we have to learn how to show up as ourselves and use all the tools that we have at our disposal to, for the best outcomes. So one of the visuals that I'm a very visual person. So one of the visuals that I use when I go into AI is I think about all of the content that it has that I couldn't possibly hold in my brain. And I view it as being the New York City Public Library, the big one on the corner of Fifth Avenue and 42nd Street with those giant lions in front. And I can put this on like a backpack and I can bring this with me wherever I go. And this tool is holding all of this information that I couldn't possibly remember and might not even know about. Um, and it's a compilation of a lot of stuff that it's stolen from other people, to be perfectly honest. And just like all of this information of what humans have written over centuries. So I have now access to all of this information. What I'm bringing to it is I'm bringing my wisdom. I'm bringing what I have learned over 40 years of working and over 60 years of living. But I'm also bringing discernment. How am I going to use this? Like, what feels good to me? If I automate the process, when you start automating things and giving AI permission to work on your behalf, you really need to want to think that through first and what you're giving permission to, because it all moves so quickly that you can go from being this much, off target or off the path that you wanted to go down, and within seconds be miles away from where you wanted to go. And that's really scary to me. So I don't automate very much. I don't give a lot of permissions. Um, I use this in a way that I could stay in the driver's seat. And I really don't have a comfort level to do it any other way at this point. Maybe in the future, but not right now. So, it's my recommendation if you're going to automate things, to really understand what you're handing over control to, and to make sure that you have very clear instructions and that you have, stop gaps in there where you're saying, like if you find this, stop and ask me a question. And you really want to think that through. And I'm pretty sure that most people do not do that. They are looking for fast, they're looking for easy, they're looking to stop doing something that they don't want to do in the first place. And there are a lot of ways that you can tackle this, but going directly into automating things that you don't want to do, it's a recipe for disaster. And I don't recommend doing that unless you really put a lot of thought um, and iteration into it. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about how I use AI. And I don't use just one tool because these tools are getting really smart. They do different things. I use a compilation of tools. I use Claude primarily for writing and for strategy. And um, I'll have it build little workflows for me, but they're very, very small. They don't have control over a lot of things. But, if there's something that I do over and over again, one of the examples is after I do the Real 50 over 50 interviews, there are certain content pieces that I need. So I'll upload the transcript and I'll ask it to create a summary based on an overall flow and template that I use. I'll ask it to pull quotes. I'll ask it to create an SEO description and a LinkedIn post, and I edit all of it. So it's just giving me something to start with, so I'm not working from a blank page. And that's really incredibly helpful, but I basically rewrite the whole thing. And then I use Perplexity, and Perplexity is actually my son's stepdad, is what I call him, because, every time I have to help my son, I have a 24-year-old son, but every time I have to help him with something like getting a job, or now he had a car accident, or he needs a car warranty, or, anything like that, I go in and I get the whole scope and I give it to him. He thinks it's me. He doesn't like AI, but it's an enormous help. I will also use it for personal things. I use it for medical stuff. Like I upload my medical test results in there because doctors give you 10 minutes. And I go to the doctor with a list of questions based on what Perplexity helps me figure out from my test results. I do research, like I need podcasts for my clients to be on. I go and I get a list, and it's not always 100%, but it's a really good starting point. So that's Perplexity is very good for research, and it gives you all of the references so you can check it right away. It works really well that way. And then the other one that I use is Notebook LM, and well, I'm sorry, it's now called Gemini Notebook. They renamed it, but that's the one we're going to talk most about today because this is where you have a closed environment that you can upload any sources that you want, and you can shut off other AI tools where they are not looking externally online for things. But this operates differently. You can upload your sources into these different libraries. And I call them living libraries because they hold your work. So, I'll create living libraries of the transcripts from my Real 50 over 50 interviews. I had a series of 55 articles I wrote on LinkedIn over the course of a year. I took a course that I had written and had running, starting in 2009. I started writing it, but I launched it in 2012, and it ran through 2016. So I took like over 100 files from that course that covered everything from social media, PR, SEO, content development, audience development, social listening, all of these different things. And I started to ask the library, what's still relevant? And it told me that the social media content was not really relevant anymore, but there was some good vintage stories that I could use. And then it said the rest of it is still really good. And, what that is showing me is that I focused my work all these years ago on the things that don't change. And that also plays out well in AI because what you're focusing on, if you're working with the things that don't change, that's basically relationships. That's what builds trust. That's what builds credibility. That's what journalists want to write about. And those are all the things that like get you brought up in AI searches, which is now like taking over Google. Um, so all of it kind of plays out into when you really own your content and you connect the pieces and you understand, like, what are the things that you've created over the years that got you to where you are today. Um, what you can let go of. Like I'm going to swing back now to the tried and new process, what we talked about in Article 4 and a little bit in Article 5. That's when you go through the content that you already have and you decide what stays, what goes, what could be upcycled, recycled, what could be given away, and what could be sold. This now becomes the foundation for your next, whatever comes next, this next iteration of your business. And it needs to be contained somewhere. And a Gemini notebook is a really good place to do that because you can create separate libraries. So like I created one with my interviews and one with my old content and one with the articles that I wrote over a year on LinkedIn, which really was like a journal for my business. And that turned into this whole methodology. So just those three libraries alone, I have enough content to like slice and dice and turn into other things for probably the next 10 years. And it's all mine. So it's a closed environment. So when I'm using these libraries, I'm asking questions of an AI tool, which is Google Gemini, or I'm using the predefined resources that they've created in there. There's an entire studio where you can run a mind map, a data table, an infographic, videos, an audio series that's called an audio overview, which is like a podcast of two people talking about the sources that you've provided. And what's really interesting with that is it's Google. So it's using its knowledge about search and what's trending and the phrases and the words that people are looking for. And you can also, give it prompts and, direct it in a specific way. There are also predefined reports that you can run. So you can run like a summary, or you can run like training materials from your own content. There are all of these things that you can do, just with a couple of clicks of a button, and and then you can break them out so you're only having it look at specific things. So even if you had 100 different sources in one of your libraries, but you only wanted it to look at three, you just select those three, and that's all it's looking at. And I have clients working on this as well, and what they're creating, it's things that they forgot they had. I have one client that has pulled back. She remembered, actually, she remembered a series of 10 interviews that she did 13 years ago about people in her community that were, up and coming. And she said that they had all become, since she had done the original interviews, they've all become quite successful. And she's now doing a whole series of articles around, where they were then and where they are now. And when she first came up with this as an idea, she felt like she didn't keep up with them, with their level of success. And then when she went back and she listened to the interviews and she started to work with them, she reached out to me and she said, I wasn't giving myself enough credit. I have been really successful. My success just looks different. And that was really nice to hear. It was really nice to see her experience that. And I have another client right now who has a marketing agency, and one of the things she loves to do is get PR for herself. So she's got 20 years worth of articles and podcasts, and some of it is top tier media. She wrote an ongoing series for Entrepreneur and for, I believe it was Forbes, for several years. And we're taking all of this content and we're building it out into a thought leadership platform for her on Substack, so she can share her point of view as more of a professional in the marketing industry, rather than an agency owner. And she just keeps having these like little blasts of things that she remembers, and where she was at a certain time when something was going on in one of these media interviews. And it's really fun to watch this happen. And one of the things that happened with my experience with working with these tools in this way is I uploaded 145 transcripts and 18 panels from the Real 50 Over 50, which is the live stream interview series that I've been doing about 3.5 years now. And I just asked, like, how many topics did we talk about? And now these are all women over 50 who are, accomplished entrepreneurial women. Most of them left corporate careers and started their own thing. And they're pretty much figuring out what comes next because, they have more space and they have more time to think about, what do they really want? And what they didn't want is they didn't want to reinvent themselves. We talked about 347 different topics in these interviews, and the top 10 did not include reinvention. The number one topic that we talked about was reclaiming and remembering, which is exactly what this work is. It's going back and putting together all of the parts of what brought you here, and figuring out the parts that you need to say goodbye to and the parts that you need to bring in with you. And that is the tried portion of this work. The new portion is building these libraries into Notebook LM I'm sorry, Gemini notebook. It's going to take me several months to stop saying that. But building out these libraries, these living libraries of your own work that you can now ask questions about. You can turn it into data that you can share. I mean, I have all of those interviews. I have more I can add. That is real market research on women over 50 that I can use in all different ways. So think about what you have, what you've already created, the things that move the needle for you in some way, the things that changed the way you thought about something, changed the way you worked, or somebody, people started to see your work in a different light because you talked about it differently. Those are the places to start. Don't try to do it all at once because it's going to be overwhelming and you'll just stop. But just find those things that were interesting, those things that captured your attention. And once you start remembering things because it's all yours. And then when you start to work with it within the context of a closed environment, and all the tools are looking at is what you're giving it to look at. You can add things externally, but it's not going to go look for them unless you tell it to go look for it. And what the tools start to reflect back to you are the things that you're too close to see. What I was talking about in the beginning of this live stream, the things that you just are too close, or you feel like, of course, everybody knows how to do that. Why am I even talking about that? And those are always the things that make what you do more special than you consider. And it's the thing that makes you stand out. And in this world of AI slop and people that people having the ability to claim your work is AI slop, which will then, tell the algorithms, oh, don't show anybody this because it's not good. She didn't write this. You want to be able to create content that is undeniably yours. It's undeniably in your voice. And in the next article next week, what we're going to be talking about, we're going to move these first 6 articles were about the inner work. So it's all about your stories and your work and your values, and that's all internal. Next week, we start getting external, and we're going to start with your audience. And we often portray ourselves as the hero of our own journey to our audience, but um, the audience is the hero, and we need to show them what we've learned, but not to elevate ourselves, to be able to help them to be able to see something maybe they can't see. And it's really interesting when you start to kind of apply the things that we've covered in the first 6 articles about the inner work, and when you start to apply that to the outer work, and when you start to create this content of only your own content in this closed environment and present it to the audience that's already asking these questions. That's another thing AI is really good at. Let AI help you figure out the questions people are already asking, and then you can reframe your content to answer those questions. We're going to get into that in the Found article, which is 2 weeks from now, and that is all about how to structure your content, SEO, search engine optimization, AEO, answer engine optimization, which is a new buzzword, but I've been doing that for years. So, how to create your content so it's out there working for you, based on how these tools are working now, and it all kind of fits together. And if you haven't looked at the past articles, please go ahead and take a look at them. This is a good time to catch up on all of the inner work. There is also a workbook. I've included a link in the um, in the chat here, and it'll also be in the article below, which will be available shortly after this live stream. It has links to all of the articles. There's a workbook, and there are 2 more roundtables coming up. So all of the information is there. And I hope you're finding this helpful. I hope you're learning some things. I hope it's making you curious and, having you explore what you already have, and maybe a different way of approaching AI, a different way of approaching your own content. Um, we need to have our relationships with tools that we use and with the content that we share. And um, most people don't do that. They're just looking, it's Tuesday, I need to write an article. What's the fastest way I'm going to do it? Um, when you actually create the content that represents who you are and what you're doing, it it becomes a team member, and it's out there building relationships for you while you're off doing something else. When people actually get to meet you or have a conversation with you, if they've spent any time with your content, they know you, they know what you stand for, they understand who you are, and it's an entirely different conversation. It's the start of a relationship before you get to meet them. So none of this is new. So much of this I wrote in 2009, but I'm sharing it again and again and again because this is the stuff that doesn't change, and there's always going to be something new to add to it. So I thank you for spending some time today. Please leave comments, share this with somebody else that needs to see it, and let's stay connected here on Substack. Have a great day, everybody.